But I think generally speaking, what you're seeing is that people are rotating, in my opinion, into where there's high utility.
Alrighty, everybody, what is going on? Welcome back to another CYPRX video breakdown. This is going to be part 2 of the previous video upload that we did, going over a quick updated technical analysis on Canton Coin's price action. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Rolling over now into part 2, we're going to be going over some highlights from the space that I was on with Yuval Ruse just the other day on January 30th to end what a phenomenal month Canton Network had in the month of January 2026. So shout out to Yuval Ruse for this one. He said here, my first space was fun. Thank you, C. Demanicore, for the help. Also, special shout out for Siegefire for the entertainment. I think Siegefire was a little bit drunk coming into the Twitter space. Nonetheless, it was a great time. We had a great conversation. And today I want to play some of those video clips and go over some of the skepticism around Canton Network and recent posts from some other influencers that could be disproved, and some things that even Yuval himself highlighted on in this conversation. So the first thing right off the bat is IOV 1981 down here on this post said, Canton Coin is not required to validate transactions. It is simply a reward token, and by this nature will not accrue real value because of its very limited utility, unlike tokens from modular blockchains like AVAX and Metal Blockchain that are true infrastructure assets. Now, I'm super bullish on the Metal Blockchain. Don't really pay too much attention to AVAX. Nonetheless, Yuval Ruse down here replied back and said, wrong. You must pay for transactions using Canton Coin. Do some homework. And I said, I love it when Yuval Ruse comes in with the facts. It's insane how many people just casually won't read documents, but will take all the time in the world to type up an opinion piece about something they could just read into. So with that being said, as always, giving you guys the facts straight from the source, I went over to the Canton documents and the digital asset documents and pulled directly from the document so you guys can see that opinion pieces like this need to be ignored, or at least to some extent disproven, so that way they're not shaping your beliefs and your investment thesis around certain projects in this space. Again, none of this is financial advice. I'm just showing you guys how easy this research is to do. So I said in reply back to this individual, before I get into some of the clips from the space that myself and Yuval were on, we are entering into an era where research over opinions is what will make investors successful. Reread that, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, this is extremely important in my personal opinion. Please do research. Posts like this are avoidable by just reading. The initial claim that Canton Coin's purpose is solely to incentivize stakeholders by enabling third-party application providers and super validators to mint coins as rewards misrepresents its full role. In reality, Canton Coin is essential to the network's core operations and directly is tied to its utility and activity. Validators use Canton Coin to validate transactions, as burning is a necessary step in the transaction process, making the token a fundamental part of the network security and integrity. Additionally, validators can mint Canton Coins based on actual network usage, such as user-initiated transfers or node uptime, linking the token to meaningful participation. The system employs a proof of utility and burn-in equilibrium, where increased network activity results in coins being burned, reducing supply and helping stabilize the token's value according to its real utility, not speculation. It also supports network functions. Burning Canton Coin pays for transaction fees and creates traffic balances, making it a vital operational element rather than just a reward. Overall, Canton Coin is indispensable for transaction validation, resource usage, and signaling activity, demonstrating that its role is integrally woven into the network security, efficiency, and ecosystem health far beyond merely an award incentive. Love and light. Let's rise up and work on our education together. Again, so this is not attack. I'm not attacking the person, by the way, in the comments down here. IOV 1981. I'm just here simply to educate you guys and show you all that in the documents, you could simply go and disprove people's comments like this and opinions, where it says here, straight from the documents, if Canton Coin is used for a multi-party transaction, such as an atomic settlement of a tokenized asset paid for in Canton Coin, Then it says the global synchronizer traffic. To have transactions sequenced by the global synchronizer, validators buy synchronizer traffic by burning Canton coin. The process of burning Canton coin to create a traffic balance is simpler than a general transfer. Then down here, it specifically says this converts into an amount of Canton coin to be burned based on the traffic price parameter. Next, right over here, it gives a whole entire Venn diagram to summarize this process. But right here, it says these fees are not paid to any other party directly. Instead, users burn Canton coin to cover these fees. It says it right here. This supports the global synchronizer, burn and mint equilibrium, so on and so forth. And then right over here on the Canton Network website, it specifically says how the tokenomics work, a self-regulating ecosystem. The Canton coin employs a sophisticated burn and mint equilibrium mechanism. Burning network usage fees are burned, removing Canton coins from circulation. So again, all these things, just make sure that you guys, if you're going to be jumping into new projects, that you do research on them. You know, you actually read the documents thoroughly thin and through. You watch panel discussions of the individuals like Yuval Ruz and Eric, who have been on so many panel discussions as of recent, going over the project itself to kind of dispose all the FUD uncertainty and just doubt that surrounds the project, because people think it's new. People think it's just popped up out of nowhere and it's just some new project, when in reality, it's not. They have been working on Canton Network for over a decade now. Moving on, another fundamental piece here that was shared that can be disproven, and that actually Yuval himself even commented on, and I want to play that video clip first from the space that I was on with Yuval just the other day. So Lumpy News, sorry that I don't follow you, I'll go and give you a follow back here. Dr. Crypto Lethead or Jethead here, Lumpy News, asked me, what do I think about Smoke's post, where it seemed like he was dissing Canton Coin here in this post by highlighting a portion in the documents where it says, without these third-party applications, Canton Coin will not have any value no matter the efforts of digital asset. So don't take this from me, take it from Yuval Ruz and what he says in this podcast in regards and in response to Smoke's post. Take a second here and listen to bits and pieces of the recording.
Well, that brings me back. I want to full circle back to the question that you had mentioned from that researcher on the internet, whom I've gotten to it with before as well. He's very tribal. So for anybody that's listening, you've all recently responded to a comment on a post from a researcher that highlights in the Canton documents that states, without these third-party applications, Canton Coin will not have any value no matter the efforts of digital asset. Could you kind of, you mentioned that it should be seen as a positive, right? It should be seen as a positive thing. Maybe kind of discuss why someone would be skeptical when they hear or read in the documents, you know, third-party applications, quote unquote, and why that would be positive. Like, what's the disconnect there? Why does so many people in the community, crypto space and its whole, think that that's something that should be frowned upon?
I'm going to disappoint you. I have no clue why someone would say this. It is literally, I don't know. I don't know. I think in economics for dummies, they wouldn't even put that in there. It's just so basic. So I just don't even understand why someone would say that.
Well, it's because they're tribal. It's because they're tribal, and it's because they try to get people to fixate on an agenda that they're trying to push. And if they don't agree with something, then it doesn't fit their niche.
That could be.
You know, for me and for the rest, just to kind of hear a little bit about how you think of the role. Obviously, it's significant, but you know, how significant, and what are the connections that we should be aware of?
Yeah, it's a great question, and thank you for that. I you know, interestingly enough, I think I got dissed. I asked the question from the author this week, but they never replied. Where in our paper we said that Canton will not be successful unless third parties are active on Canton. Doesn't matter how hard digital asset tries. And they were like, "You see, this is nothing." And I was like, "You see, I think you got it the other way around. This is the right way to do it." But long story short, again, I just said we didn't call ourselves Canton Labs, because this needs to be bigger than digital asset. This needs to be significantly bigger than digital asset. And therefore, when we launched the foundation, it was extremely important to us, even though who doesn't want to decide all the important decisions, but it was extremely important for us that we are just one vote of many. And, a digital asset, nobody controls any of the committees. I am not the chairman of the board. Eric is not the chair of the tokenomics committee. I think for us, that was an extremely important component. Now, we do today still do a lot of the development work. You will see very soon that part of the tokenomics of Canton is that 5% of the tokenomics goes to a development fund by the foundation, where everybody will get to participate. So if you are a technical person in nature, our job is to spread the gospel, to continue to improve the protocol. But again, eventually in steady state, we just want to be one of the community members of Canton.
Right. So you heard Yuval Ruz, and not to diss any researchers on the internet, but he literally said that, he has no idea why anybody would even think that. And then in reality, having these third parties, it's actually the way things are supposed to be. The next thing I want to focus your attention on that I really enjoyed about this conversation is how Yuval went on to go on and say that none of this that's happening right now is by accident, and that what they're building right now at Canton Network didn't happen overnight, and it's over a decade of work in the making. Take a second here and listen.
And, Canton was the first chain that was selected, $1 trillion worth of assets between moment is how do you bring very interesting assets? And the example was, just recently was DTCC. For those that don't know, DTCC manages $100 trillion worth of assets between US treasuries, US equities, US municipal bonds, and US corporate bonds. And, Canton was the first chain that was selected. We don't have an exclusivity with the DTCC, and there's probably going to be other networks in the future. But at the moment, it's Canton, and we're starting with US treasuries and hopefully other assets later on. But there's other assets that exist on Canton between private funds, insurance. We just recently did the first trades on gilts, Eurobonds, and hopefully other assets from Asia that are going to come soon. And, also on the crypto side, you're going to see within the next, few weeks that you'll actually be able to trade wrapped assets or wrapped crypto on Canton just with privacy. And now you have effectively all the building blocks that you need in order to build really cool applications. So we have the first DEX with privacy, which is Temple, that just launched a week ago and is now one of the biggest activities. You're going to see stablecoin payments with privacy. You'll see a lot of players entering that on Canton, whether it's payroll providers that can now pay to traditional companies, whether it's treasury management solution, whether it's remittance, there's going to be just a lot of use cases around payments because everybody, like I said, wants to use crypto rails in order to effectuate payments. But traditional companies that are publicly traded are not going to accept doing, stablecoin payments if you don't have privacy. So what we at Digital Asset are doing, and all of these players, all of these logos, they're building a lot of these, either how to bring on-chain these assets, or the applications that now once you have these assets on-chain can use. And the reality is, with Broadridge, we do about $400 billion of repo a day. Broadridge, just to give context for people, processes about 70% of the US fixed income market. It's a very big number. And that means that Broadridge is a systemic company. And if something goes wrong with Broadridge, it has implications on the rest of the market. And as much as we would love to, at Digital Asset and Canton, see these players on board faster and move faster, there are consequences to getting these things wrong. So we were working very carefully with them to onboard them. But I think already next week, you're going to see a big announcement from another company in the US that is going to start providing a very important asset into Canton. You're going to see more people participating. And as these things go live, I just think that you're going to see the utility on the network just increase over time. But again, you just need to do it very carefully, given the types of organizations that we work with.
The other thing is you've had a lot of success bringing on a lot of very prestigious institutions. If you could just talk a little bit about what's actually happening on the ground. I mean, saw some things on NASDAQ. There's you have people in the cap table. There's obviously new validators. If you could just try to give us a view of kind of what's in motion. Since you do seem to have a lot of logos, the question, of course, is what are the logos doing?
Sure. I think that maybe if you take a step back, the way I think about what is the success of a network, the success of a network is going to be, can you bring high quality assets to the network? Can you have people that can build applications that know how to take advantage of those assets? And then as a result of that, you get users, right? That's kind of the order of operations. So what we at Digital Asset have been doing for the last few years, and I think, people are like, where is this Canton coming from? This is not a mistake. I mean, we had a plan how to roll this out. This was not a mistake. This is not just like, oh, suddenly people are hearing about Canton and then like overnight we're able to sign these institutional partnerships. These are things that we have had, waiting for quite some time. And
so there that was. I know that was a bit of a mouthful, but nonetheless, right, that goes hand in hand with something that a gentleman, the CEO of Theramune, said just the other day, 3 weeks ago. And you just saw BlackRock take up a huge stake in Theramune. And the gentleman from Theramune, who literally has a DAT based on Canton coin, right? Listen to what he says. He says the same exact thing, that this is not by accident. This is all intentional.
See how the things evolve, but we're very excited about where Canton is positioned today. And I think you'll see, again, things transform from, pilot to really live and scale. So I think as you see more regulatory, whether it's the SEC, CFTC announcements of various different things, that's where you're going to see more institutions be able to dial in. I think, why Theramune as an equity as well is important to think about, because there are certain institutions that still can't hold cryptocurrencies. And that's an element as well that I think will continue to evolve, where you're going to have that more of an acceptable investment across the ecosystem. So, those are where that I would continue to look at what's the size and scale of real world assets and transactions that are going on top of these chains. Look for different regulatory tweaks from going from pilot to actual live, and then continue to see who's announcing that they're participating. So we've had some pretty big ones in our ecosystem over the last month or so, and we're really excited to see how it continues to evolve in 2026.
I mean, you guys have, there's tons of headlines that we could go through. Theramune raised $540 million in private placement. Some amazing things have been happening for your company.
Yeah, I think it was intentional. Like, this is 8 years in the making of getting to this point. And so, like any network, it's only as good as those that participate in it. And so you intentionally try to go after the right mix of players. So from a traditional finance, you have, obviously, we talked about DTC, a CSD, the largest one out there. You have NASDAQ, US Equity Exchange. You have large banks. You got JP Morgan, you got HSBC, SocGen, BNP, Bank of America. You have large, banks on that side of it. You have Broadridge, you have Tradeweb, you have large institutional players, and then you have on the crypto sides, you have Circle, you have Copper, Custodian, Market Makers, Cumberland, Fireblocks. You just go through, and it was kind of intentionally trying to go out to the right disbursement of players to bring them into the ecosystem to strengthen the network.
Right. So double mention of this is intentional. And that just went hand in hand with what Yuval Ruz said. Now, I know that this video breakdown has been pretty lengthy, so I'll play the last clip here for you guys, because it again goes hand in hand with what this gentleman just said, is that we are about to transition from this pilot and experimental proof of concept phase into live production. And that just goes hand in hand with something that you've all said at the very onset of this podcast on this X space, where he particularly mentioned that the value of these networks, has just been driven by pure speculation. And what he believes is that people are really starting to rotate into real utility projects. Take a second here and listen.
Well, today was a pretty historic day, as Canton coin hit a new all-time high. And it was an interesting screenshot that I shared earlier today, where the rest of the market was relatively down comparative to Canton coin's price action. We actually, I believe, jumped into the number 15 spot, surpassing Chainlink. Not that this is a competition by any means, but it brings me back to something that in a recent podcast, Eric, a co-founder, said. In particular, he specifically mentioned that we could see a scenario where we see sideways to downwards price action as kind of like a macro backdrop in the digital asset ecosystem or the risk off spectrum, and that Canton could continue to burn through it. And we could see an anti-correlation with the macro kind of risk off spectrum, because as we continue to drive more utility into the ecosystem, it generates more burn. Could you've all kind of expand on that and go into some details on why you all chose to implement this burn and mint equilibrium, and kind of compare it to some things that you've seen in this space over the last decade, without naming any names or particular chains, but just kind of go into detail on that a little bit?
Oh, really? You see, I was about to give you a name of a chain.
Okay. I mean, yeah, if you want to name some chains, sure. If you want to piss some people off.
Because I think Charles from Cardano was giving me a hard time. Listen, I think that what you're seeing in the market is that it's almost like bots and users are effectively just reacting, and which makes sense, by the way. But you have chains that are static, where the transactions don't burn coins. The supply is fixed. They did a pre-mine, they did something like that, and you end up realizing that mechanism means that the value of the coin, the value of the network, is pure speculation. Right? There's networks that have, if you actually calculate the dollar volume, the dollar value that gets processed on those chains, and the market cap of those chains, we're talking about, in some cases, thousands of multiple. That is not rational, right? That's just, sometimes I'll say on podcasts that crypto have defied the laws of gravity for way too long, And the reality is that what you're seeing, I would say, generally speaking, is that, Bitcoin sells, Ethereum sells, and everybody is just correlated to that, right? So maybe the way to think about it is like in equity markets, or in just generally speaking markets, there's what you call high beta assets, so more risky asset. So if you think about large cap are the most safe assets, small cap are the high risk assets. So small caps are a high beta asset. If the market sells off, you expect that small caps will just sell off harder. If the market rallies, you expect small cap to rally harder. It's just how it is. So kind of similarly speaking, what we're seeing here is that there's nothing fundamental happening other than Bitcoin and Ethereum. And there's just generally speaking, there's a risk off. And therefore you're seeing that all of the alts are getting decimated as a result of that. But I gave an example of a hyperliquid, and we'll talk about Canton. at the end of the day, if the mechanism of your chain is saying, listen, if utility grows, the chain will be less inflationary, or in some cases, even deflationary, that's just going to go contra. Now, I think that when you look at the volume of Canton, it's very low. And, we as a foundation, me, myself, can't even tell you how many people approach us to generate volume on the network. And we always refuse. We want the volume to grow, but it needs to be organic. It needs to be real volume. So I think what you're seeing is that the people that are focused on Canton are the people that are actually not looking at like macro and don't just like sell. I'm not going to say, I mean, there was someone just, sold in the last, hour or so, did a big sell. But I think generally speaking, what you're seeing is that people are rotating, in my opinion, into where there's high utility. That's what I think you are actually seeing. And that's why I think it's a contra to what is happening, is you're just saying people are saying, okay, well, I need to risk off. What do I rotate in? And I either rotate into cash or I rotate into things that I think are just safer.
Yeah, safe haven assets. I would agree.
So with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, that is all that I have for you all in today's video breakdown. I just wanted to play some highlights from that podcast with Yuval Ruz. Shout out to Yuval Ruz for that podcast. I love to be on the podcast with you. Can't wait to do it again. As always, many blessings to you guys. Be cognizant. Make sure that you guys are out there doing your own personal research. Remember, none of this here at CYPRX, none of this information is financial advice. With that being said, be cognizant, be aware out there, and I'll see you guys in the next video breakdown.